and monitored and all manner of atrocity. Oh well, they just didn't do it right or something. So the first side is they just pretend that, well, it's just coincidence or bad luck that every single time it's tried in the real world, the result is horrendous. North Korea, communist China.
So his argument is that socialism is bad because it fails every time it's been tried. It's kind of funny, Larkin, because every time capitalism is tried, it's either a corporate oligarchy or a theocratic dictatorship. Now, I don't know which socialist recently schooled you on economics, but this is clearly somebody pissed you off because you're already using like basic Cold War propaganda, and already you're not even trying.
Just all over the place. But there's another side to their dishonesty, which is what they pretend is socialism when it's 100% not. For example, they sometimes like to pretend, oh, Jesus was a socialist. He's about helping the poor. Socialism is not about helping the poor. Now, socialism and communism are slightly different ways of describing what's essentially the same thing, which is collectivism.
What? Socialism is the collective ownership of the means of production by the community. Communism is a moneyless, classless, and stateless society as defined by Marx. This isn't looking good for you, Larkin. It's really not. You don't even know what socialism or communism is. So it's safe for us to even know you're one of those people who think capitalism means free trade. Derp.
The short version is the individual doesn't matter. The collective matters. So if you have to sacrifice the rights of the individual for the good of the collective, then that's okay. In fact, it's necessary.
That is complete and utter nonsense. The individualist versus collectivist dichotomy is completely false. You don't have to be either or, because even psychology tells us that humans are an abundance of contradictions. Sure, we want self-interests, but we also want our neighbors to have health care. So it's a matter of, as long as that society does not force or coerce you, I mean, whether it's individual or collective, that's a legitimate society because everything is at free will. Nobody was forced to do anything.
Necessary and righteous. By the way, collectivism is not only the basis of what was in, Soviet Union and Red China and North Korea. It was also the basis of fascism and Nazi Germany, which were also socialists. The Nazis were literally national socialists.
No. Hitler and fascism, that's a capitalist ideology. There was free enterprise in Germany. And Hitler was literally funded by European and American industrialists. In fact, two of the survivors sued Prescott Bush because Prescott Bush was making a gas that was killing people, killing the people in the concentration camps, and they actually won. So it's not a socialist idea, especially when Hitler was going after and killing socialists and communists. What he's talking about is forced collectivism, and that's through the state. And capitalism has historically always had a state.
And they said the same things, which is that the individual doesn't really matter. He should be happy to sacrifice himself for the common good. That was the commonality for all of them. So people pretend that there's the extreme left and extreme right. They're just two very slightly different flavors of authoritarian collectivism. And if you actually look at the day-to-day lives in, Nazi Germany, which is far right, supposedly, and Soviet Russia, which is far left, supposedly, they're both just authoritarian psycho ruling classes bossing people around.
Yeah, but are we talking about like the actual political compass of this? Because far right economics is basically laissez-faire capitalism. Like, no regulations whatsoever. Let the market decide. Meanwhile, you have communism where communism where the people decide the regulations and the policies of the co-ops and the businesses. Now, socialism, it doesn't collectivize everything. It only collectivizes what the people thinks it should collectivize. The general welfare, like healthcare and education and UBI, those things would be collectivized. But then there would be other things, commodities such as shoes, Coca Cola, Nike, uh, electronics. All of these would be considered commodities and would be on the market for profit. So communism would be collectivizing all the industries and having a labor backed economy.
And robbing them and subjugating them. But the thing to understand when socialists pretend, oh, it's just about caring for people and taking care of the poor and helping the less fortunate, it's an absolute total stinking lie. Because if you go and earn a paycheck, you do some work, whatever it is, you earn money, you get money by voluntary means. You have a deal with somebody else, whether you're an employee or you make something and sell it. However, you get money as a result of voluntary exchange from people who want to trade with you. You own that. And this, almost all of this comes down to the concept of ownership. Ownership means the exclusive right to decide what is done with something. So if I own a car, it's mine. I get to decide whether to use it. I get to decide whether to let somebody else use it. I can trade it to somebody else and then it becomes theirs and whatever they give me becomes mine if I choose to. I can choose to light it on fire. I can choose to let it sit in the parking lot and never use it. It is my choice. Now, with that choice, I can decide to give my neighbor a ride to the supermarket. I can decide to loan it to somebody so they can go to the airport. I have the right to decide of my free will to let somebody use or even have that which is mine, and then it's not mine anymore. Like if I'm walking down the street, there's a poor person that seems down on their luck, I'm going to give them a little bit of money. It's not mine anymore because I chose to give it to them. Socialism and communism is not at all that in any way, shape, or form. If it's your choice whether to help people and when to help people and how to help people, that by definition is not socialism. So when they point at actual charity and generosity and
Dude,
help.
listen, Larken, you do understand that socialism actually has practice in autonomous and stateless societies. Most Native Americans were had no state and held most things in common. We have Rojava, Syria, right now, who's practicing stateless democracy. The Zapatistas in Chiapas, Mexico, right now, who's practicing stateless democracy. We have dozens of examples of socialism becoming stateless. So when you strawman and project that somehow socialism means authoritarianism, Larkin, all you're doing is ignoring history. Capitalism always becomes authoritarianism because it always becomes a state. There has not been one capitalist society that has been ANCAP. And every time I see these quote unquote examples from you guys, like Caspeia, these places are either under states or control or influenced by states, or they're there because they just happen to be there, or they had state influence. So don't talk to me about real world practice because capitalism caused homelessness. It causes poverty. It kills millions of people every year from preventable diseases and poverty, all because people didn't have enough money to get these resources. This is what happens when you privatize stuff like this. You're taking away actual life and liberty for the sake of property rights. And property rights is held above anything else for you guys. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why you guys treat rights like sins. And Jesus was a socialist, by the way. The scripture is beyond comprehensible. Like the man literally said he doesn't know if rich people go to heaven or not in one of the Matthew verses. So let's continue.
And helping the less fortunate and claim that as socialism, they are lying through their stinking teeth. Because communism and socialism are based on the notion that your need entitles you to something.
No, socialism literally just means liberty, equality, solidarity. and democracy. That's all socialism means. And I already gave you guys the textbook definition. So somebody triggered him on Facebook in one of these group debates because he's coming from a sense of anger. It looks like like who debunked Larkin and got him in his feels today.
That ownership doesn't come from voluntary exchange or production or any of that. It comes from need. From each according to his ability, you have to produce what you're able to produce, to each according to his need. Whatever you need, you're entitled to.
What we believe is creating socialistic and communistic economies on a community-based level. It's in each according to his ability, according to his need. It doesn't mean you get a certain amount of stuff and everything else is just ration. That's not that's not how socialism works. All we say when we say that is, yeah, there are certain positive and negative rights you should be guaranteed when you work full time. That's all socialism says. It doesn't say you're entitled to anybody's labor. Sure, some socialists will say that, the Marxist Leninists and the ones who believe in the state. But Larkin doesn't seem to understand that socialism and capitalism is a school of thought, and libertarianism originated in far left anarchy. So we are the original libertarians. His ideology wasn't created until 100 years after.
Well, anyone who's older than 5 should be able to think that through and say, well, wait a minute, who's going to decide what people need? Because if we have a bunch of people and they're producing different stuff and like, wow, okay, I'm hungry, I need food. Okay, where do I get it? Like, if I produce food, that doesn't make it mine according to communism, because what if somebody else needs it? So I have to go find the guy or the committee or the something that decides who needs what and say, I need a sandwich. Give me a sandwich. I'm entitled to it because I need.
Yeah, that's not how that would work. So under communism, we would have a labor-backed economy, which would mean all the goods and services produced within society is all we would be able to produce. So after work, you either swipe your badge or you enter your membership ID, and then you unlock the co-op or the business that you're trying to get into. And then you can have access to the goods and services you need or want. It's that simple. He's trying to make it sound like we need this committee to sign off on all the goods and all the voluntary transactions within society. No, that's not how that would work. In case Larkin didn't know basic economics, every developed society has a logistics system. They have a logistics system and a distribution system. And all we would do is use supply and demand for good. And we would use supply and demand, put it with, and use a logistics and distribution system. And all goods and services would do is be transported to where they need to go based on need. This is how most corporations are used now. But again, Larkin doesn't know basic economics. And if me and Larkin was having this conversation in person, you better believe he would storm out. Because this is the type of person that if you were to debunk them online, they would either block you or just simply rage quit and run away in real life. If not, punch you.
I need it. Where's that central committee going to get it? Well, they're going to steal it from somebody else, or they're going to force somebody else to make it for you. Socialism and communism are not based on generosity. They're based on entitlement and violence. Because if you're entitled to something...
No, buddy, you're thinking about capitalism, because the people who do the less work under capitalism are the main beneficiaries. We wouldn't have an economy if it weren't for the working class. We do the work. There would be no goods and services without us. And if you took CEOs and bosses out of the picture, then we would be able to organize and manage it. Because again, we're the ones who do the work. So I think he's projecting this entitlement idea, because the only entitlement system I see is a system where the people who do the less work reap the most benefits, and that's capitalism.
Something because you need it, that means somebody else is obligated to make it for you. When people say people have a right to decent housing, Well, okay, who has an obligation to build you a house?
Positive rights don't equal force. Like, look at when we talk, a positive right is a right that is a good or a service that is a common good. It is considered a general welfare of the people. When we say you have a right to healthcare, we don't mean somebody is forced to do so. He's thinking on like forced collectivism, which again only happens under a state. You don't need to force people to get health care. They will voluntarily say, hey, I'm a nurse or a doctor. I want to join your society and I want to give you health care. It's literally that simple. And unlike Larkin's ideology, it actually happened.
Because to say you have a right to a house that somebody else has to build, they don't just fall out of the sky. To say you have a right to it means somebody else has to give that to me. Why? And how are you going to make that happen? And
through mutual aid, direct action, and free association.
It comes down to everything. Well, people have a right to healthy food and drinking water. No, they don't. They have one right, which is to be left alone, to have other people not commit aggression against them. And then it's up to them to take care of themselves and other people. Other people can choose to let you live in their house or build you a house or help you build your own house or rent a room to you or whatever by means of voluntary exchange.
Probably the only thing me and him are going to agree on in this video. You're right. Your rights don't come through nature or they don't come through anybody else. Any type of quote unquote rights is given to you through society or the environment you live in. That's the only way. If rights came through nature, government nor capitalism would have ever existed.
But when the socialists and communists pretend that sharing equals socialism and communism, they're lying, because sharing means you have the right to decide what is done with something, and you choose to give some of what is yours, rightfully yours, to somebody else. That is generosity. That is charity. If it's not your choice, there's nothing noble about it. There's nothing generous about it. And what the socialists and communists want is credit for being generous by declaring that other people, not themselves, have an obligation to hand over wealth to whoever they say is the less fortunate. And the really ironic, weird thing is how many American communists and socialists there are, especially like university-age kids who really don't know how to think. I'm compassionate and caring. Everyone should be equal and blah, blah, blah. The evil rich. You are the evil rich. Compared to most of the world, you are ridiculously well off. Why aren't you giving away your stuff to 1 billion poor people in India?
That literally only matters if you live in those other countries. That's a conservative talking point that at the end of the day, okay, sure, we're the richest country in the world. You can brag about that all you want. Half of us are making 35 grand or less. People are working longer hours for less pay. More and more people are going without health care. So, sure, we're the richest country in the world, but what does that mean when the vast majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and are broke? So no.
And poor people in China, however many poor people there are in Africa, which is huge, who all have way less than you. If their need entitles them to it while you're sitting on your butt typing on something and complaining about the evils of capitalism, why don't you sell that computer or that phone and whatever else you have and give it to the less fortunate? Because they never believe their own BS. Because there is nothing noble about it. There is nothing.
Listen, man. When you can point to us one time capitalism funded universal healthcare or education on a macro level for all to use, then you can talk about Theoryland. But Larken, again, your ideology always becomes a state. It always becomes corporate oligarchy, if not theocratic dictatorship. So again, I don't know who hurt your feelings, but you're not making any sense. We have to have historical and empirical consistency. And socialism has more real world practice than ANCAP. ANCAP has never even existed.
Generous or charitable about it. There's no generosity in insisting that somebody else's stuff be given away. That's jealousy, that's envy, that's coveting. And when you advocate that it be taken from them because they have too much, that's not you being generous, that's you being bitter and envious. And that is the foundation of socialism and communism, that people are entitled to the product of other people's efforts just for existing. Now, if you want to say, well, I don't want people to be starving, so if I'm doing well and I see somebody starving, I'm going to help them out, good, that's generosity. If you're giving what is rightfully yours, but nothing is rightfully yours under communism. I mean, now communism, they come right out and say, we don't believe in private property. So it's not yours to begin with.
We do believe, I mean, again, he's being straw man because, again, this is a school of thought. But if you're talking to people who believe in anarchism, we believe in property rights. We just don't want you to collectively own. I mean, we just don't want you to own the means of production for profit. Like, I don't know why. And under communism, you would have a house, you would have a car, you would have a phone. He acts like these things can only be innovated under capitalism, despite every single capitalist system having mixed markets. Like, which one is it, Larken? Do we live under corporatism, or has capitalism been the main motivation force for everything that's happened in this world? You can't have it both ways. Every time he brags about capitalism, understand, he's bragging about a mixed market system, because there has never been no laissez-faire capitalist system. Talking about innovation and stuff as if capitalism is the only thing that done it. No, we've had public spending and private spending this whole time. And innovation does not require a monetary incentive. People motivate all the time. I mean, innovate all the time. Hunger, boredom, for fun, self-interests, yada, yada, yada. So innovation, that's not a free market requirement. The government literally made the internet, guys. They made GPS.
Ownership is determined by need, to each according to his need. You cannot generously give that which isn't yours. And under communism, nothing is yours. So even if you go, oh, here, my neighbor, have a sandwich. Well, if your neighbor's a communist, he's going to go, good, hand it over. You were oppressing me by having it in the first place, even if you made it, because I'm entitled to it because I need some lunch.
Who hurt this man's feelings today?
That is the foundation of communism, and it's evil and insane. And when they point at actual generosity, which absolutely requires the concept of ownership and voluntary trade and capitalism, and I mean that term not as the corporo-fascist ridiculousness we have now, but what the term originally meant, which is private ownership of things based on lack of government intervention and voluntary exchange.
You see, he did it right there. He gave us a false definition of capitalism. He said it's voluntary exchange. No, Larken, capitalism is the private ownership of the means of production. Nothing more and nothing less. What did I tell you guys? He was going to do it.
That's what the word used to mean. Now, we can bicker about what the word means. Usually I don't bother with that.
So just to confirm, he doesn't know what capitalism means. He doesn't know what socialism means. He doesn't know what communism means. Just to confirm that.
I just say if somebody produces something on their own, it's theirs. And if they agree to trade with somebody else, okay, that's valid too. When there's coercion, that's when it stops being valid. And there will always be coercion in socialism and communism because it is based on the idea that if someone needs something, then somebody else is obligated to give it to them. So the whole foundation of the commie BS is that if somebody needs something and doesn't have it, then he's being oppressed by anyone who does have it.
Complete and utter nonsense.
Even if that other person had nothing to do with them, like they're not the reason you don't have it. And this idea that, well, I'm entitled to a living wage. From who? It's a purely childish...
Communism is a moneyless society, so there would be no living wage. What are you talking about, bro?
And I'll often ask communists, oh, you're entitled to a living wage. Okay, am I entitled to a living wage? Well, yeah. Okay, cool. Where's my job, Mr. Communist?
There are. To make his point, though, there are libsocs and ancoms who are reformists. Those people are not anarchists. Those are reformists who like the idea of anarchism. You know, if you're actively going out there right now for a social democratic reform, you are a social democratic reformist. You're not a revolutionary. Revolutions destroy systems. Revolutions overturn systems. You're going through the system, and that's historically inaccurate. If you listen to Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, or any of the socialist political leaders of our time,
communist. Why aren't you giving me a job? You're oppressing me by not giving me a job. Well, I don't have to. Well, why the hell does that guy have to? He made a business, he created jobs, he trades with people, and all of a sudden, because he was able to do that, you think you're entitled to a job from him because he bothered to be productive. Meanwhile, you're sitting on your butt whining about your entitlement crap. You're not giving anybody anything, but somehow that's not oppression. So somebody offering me a deal that I can say no to, I can say, yeah, I'll work for you. No, I don't want that deal. Or yeah, I'll buy something from you. Or no, I don't want to. Somehow that's oppressing me. But you, Mr. Communist, offering me nothing, offering no trade, no job, no anything, you're not oppressing me? Like, all that guy was add an option. It might be a crappy option, and they might say, I don't want your crappy option. But all he did was add another option for me. You didn't even do that. So, Mr. Communist, why is it that I'm entitled to a living wage from that guy just because he was productive? It's because they believe in from each according to his ability. If you're able to do something, you are, according to them, obligated to do it, but not to benefit from it. Other people's need means they're the ones who benefit from your effort. There's a word for these people benefit from these people's effort without their consent. That word is slavery. The foundation of socialism and communism is slavery. And when these clueless people are out there pushing slavery.
Oh no, yep. Somebody triggered him today. Now communism is just slavery. Forget any rational discussion about economics. Forget any of that. Nope. You just want slavery. You just want slavery, Nate, even though you're black.
Free, and then pointing to people being generous and helping other people out and go, see, that's what we want. No, it's not. It's the exact opposite. Actual generosity requires a respect for ownership and self-ownership.
That's theory land nonsense that you have no empirical data to back up on.
He produces on their own is theirs unless and until they decide to trade with somebody else or voluntarily give it to somebody else or in some other way do something consensual with other people. Without that, there is no humanity. There is no civilization. There is no morality. And this is why I say communism and socialism, even though they're pitched as these progressive philosophies, they are the philosophies of cockroaches and sewer rats.
If it wasn't for left-wing organizations during the Gilded Age and stuff like that, if it weren't for union people getting their, literally getting killed, let alone getting their asses whipped, we wouldn't have an 8-hour work week. We wouldn't have paid vacation in some places. We don't have it in America, but the point is, like, this guy is acting like capitalism has been this thriving force for humanity the last 200 years, when no, all it's done is suppress the masses of the population. Like, imagine a group of people doing all the work and getting none of the benefits. That's true laziness, if you ask me.
Which is, if I need something, I must be entitled to it. And if I'm entitled to it, it's rightfully mine. And if it's rightfully mine, I'm justified in doing whatever I have to do to get it from whoever I see who has it. That's how cockroaches and sewer rats think. And it's how people who pretend to be generous and caring think when they want to be entitled to other people's stuff. And conspicuously, they never feel obligated to give the stuff they have to the people who have less than them. They sort of...
Coming from the guy who's coming from the group who uses who talks all this crap about government, but like uses all the roads and all the services of government. Like it's one thing to say it's one thing to say like you live in society and it is what it is, but you're arguing against basic things that every developed society has, Larkin. You may not think it, but again, if we were to ask Larkin, where has his economics ever worked? Where has there been a society where laissez-faire capitalism is giving people healthcare, education, and basically running developed societies? He won't be able to give that to you guys because every developed society in this world, every society that's rated to have the best quality of life, are mixed markets. They have established rights and they do have ownership. I will give him that. But the funny thing about it is we never argued against ownership. We're arguing against the ownership of the means of production. That's it. That's what communists are debating.
Sort of leave that part out because it has nothing to do with fairness or generosity or compassion. It just has to do with, I want free stuff because I'm an entitled child and I'm going to whine at anybody who is successful as a result of their own effort and talk as if I'm entitled. And if anybody comes along and points out there's several billion people who have way less than you, well, that doesn't count. Like what I have, I need. What I have is rightfully mine. I'm the sewer rat, with this little pile of stuff. It's mine, and I'm going to bite anybody who tries.
I don't hate rich people, by the way. I don't like the capitalist system. It has nothing to do with rich people. All these roles in capitalism are assigned. So it's for us to say that we should hate rich people. No, we should just hate the system. They're just benefiting off of the system. Of course, unless they're like tyrannical corporatists like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg.
Who tries to take it. Meanwhile, I'm trying to steal that guy's stuff. That is socialism and communism. And however many layers of euphemism they try to hide it under, and however many times they try to pretend it has anything to do with sharing and generosity or anything noble, that is and will always be a lie. Socialism and communism are inherently anti-human and violent and anti-charity and anti-freedom and anti-justice. And ironically, I'll end with this.
I would argue that's capitalism, sir. I mean, we're talking about a system that privatizes resources that are required for you to sustain your life and liberty. So 1.3 million children dying every year due to poverty. That's because of capitalism and privatization. That's saying somebody else has more of a right to profit than these kids have a right to starve. And I don't really see any reason or have ever heard any justification for this idea that you shouldn't have a decent standard of living if you work full time, especially.
This. The way to get closest to the utopia that the collectivists describe is an unflinching, absolute adherence to the concept of private property. Because it allows us to get so prosperous that we have so much that when there is someone in need, we can voluntarily help them out, which America
never has happened, by the way. Never has happened.
Already do to the tune of billions and billions of dollars so that our poor, none of them are starving to death. Most of them have widescreen TVs and cars and cell phones and stuff, as if that's poor. It is prosperity that allows for that level of actual generosity and charity, and you cannot
imagine having to deny this idea that there are poor people in America. Like those 600K people living on the streets right now. Oh, no, they're not poor. They live in the richest country in the world. What are they talking about? Come on, Larkin.
Not ever get to that prosperity unless there is the concept of private property, that what I produce is mine unless and until I choose to trade with somebody else. So if you want to get to the utopia described by the communists and socialists, the closest way to get there is go the exact opposite direction. And the communists and socialists will never acknowledge that because they always view themselves as the ones entitled to what other people produce. And they never view themselves as the ones obligated to be the ones producing anything.
Thanks for your feelings, Larken. Let me know how I did, guys. I'm very curious what y'all think. Oops. Not that.